So hi there. So we probably all have what we think of as demons in ourselves, in our lives. Parts of ourselves that seem to undermine our growth or development, or addictions or things that trap us and keep us pinned down. So that is that's part of the spiritual life, taming those demons, working with those demons, transforming those demons, and particularly that's a quality that's most closely associated with the Buddhist figure of Padmasambhava, sometimes called the second Buddha, the great magician of Tibet. And over the course of these two, this Padmasambhava Day celebration, we're going to be looking at some of those qualities I guess relating them a bit to our own lives. So my name is Viri Naga. It's really great to be welcoming you to Dharma Prasada community in South London. I'm here with Amlavajra. How are you doing, Amlavajra?
I'm all right, thanks.
Yeah.
Quite looking forward to hearing what Maitreyabandhu has got to say.
Yeah.
Obviously, ordained me, so I'm his good friend.
Great.
So and I know he's got a very close relationship with Padmasambhava, so I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say.
Yeah, good. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah.
So the plan is that me and Amlavajra, we've got a talk, an audio recording from Maitreyabandhu. He's done a talk for us, and he unfortunately he did do a video, but the video there's some problem with the file, so we've only got audio. But nevertheless, that'd be good enough.
We'll have to concentrate a bit harder.
That's right. That's right. We'll bring him into the room in your imagination.
Yes.
So we're going to be listening to talk from Maitreyabandhu. And then Amlavajra and I are going to have a bit of a discussion about that, which I'm really looking forward to. Like you say, a lot of associations with you and with Maitreyabandhu. But it's really helpful for us if we get a bit of some questions and comments for you as well. It helps us feel a bit more connected.
Yes.
Here we are speaking to a camera.
Speaking to a camera in a little room. So it helps the imaginative process if you ask some questions, and then we feel alive.
Alive, yes. So, just say hi in the chat room. Really nice to know who's tuning in. And just if there's something you want us to talk about after the discussion, let us know, and we'll have a chat about that. So that'd be good. And then after that, we will. That would be the end of this section of today's event, the sort of Dharma input, if you like. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pack up all the equipment here and sort of leg it down to effort space, where we're going to set up for the ritual part of the tonight's festivities with Mitra ceremony. So we've got 4 men becoming Mitras later on: Ollie, Oliver, Nicholas, and David. So I'm really excited. Olivier. I'm really excited. Well, really excited for those guys, and it's also a real highlight of these festivals.
Yeah, very.
So, anyway, just to say that second part won't be up for longer than a week. So we're just going to be taking that second part down on request of one of the Mitras. So don't miss it. Don't miss it. You've got a week to.
Is it worth saying what Mitra is? There might be someone watching who doesn't know.
You'll do that later.
Do that
later. Yeah, do that later. Yeah, but we'll share all of that. But for now, I guess we should listen to Maitreyabandhu.
Yeah.
Great. So I've got Adam here who's doing text. So Adam's going to hand over to Maitreyabandhu, and we'll see you in a bit.
So today we're celebrating Padmasambhava Day. I've been doing the Padmasambhava sadhana for 30 years. It was given to me by my beloved private preceptor Suvadra. On the shrine here, you can see an image of Padmasambhava that was painted by Chintamani. This is a photograph of it, and it was a picture I took of the painting because in Bante's room, I'd never seen it before, but it was, if you imagine Bante facing you as he talked to you, and the picture of Padmasambhava was just behind your shoulder. So as he talked to whoever came in, there'd be Padmasambhava behind his shoulder. So that's become an important image of Padmasambhava to me. So here you see the image of Padmasambhava. I've got one the other side of the room as well. They're sort of talking to each other. So Madrina just asked me to give about a half hour's talk. I don't know whether I'll manage that. Let's see. But all I thought I'd do is try to evoke Padmasambhava, not by telling you the stories and the legends and so on. I've done that before, and and the wonderful legends, but that's not the approach I'm going to take today. What I thought I'd do is just talk about what he looks like. Particularly, I wanted to talk about the robes and what they might mean. For some reason, the three robes of Padmasambhava, is sometimes something I keep coming back to and wanting to talk about. They seem to me to express in metaphorical, in symbolic, and in image terms, the very heart of what it means to be a Buddhist. And of course, I think that what it means to be a Buddhist means something like what it means to make the most of your life. Buddhist is I've always found that word problematic. Buddhist, as if you're an ist, and Buddhism, and as if it's an ideology or a doctrine or a theory that you've learned. It's not that. Buddhism, what we call Buddhism in the West, is I much prefer, our names as order members are what we call dharmacharis or dharmacharinis, and that means he or she who fares in the Dharma, and that means he or she who lives for the truth. Yeah. So if you think of do you see how different that feels to Buddhism? That I'm a person who wants to live for the truth, because if I try to live for the truth, I can try and tell the truth simply just now. I can try and be open to the truth that I need to hear, including truth which I find uncomfortable and difficult. And that path of truth can go all the way up to wisdom. Yeah. So if I think of myself someone who's trying to dedicate their life to living out the truth, then yeah, I'm very much, I feel that what I've tried to do, and I feel that Buddhism is the best way of doing that. If you find a better one, do let me know. But I think it's the best way of doing that. So yeah, I thought I'd just talk about what Padmasambhava wears, because I think it sort of gets to the heart of, for me at least, what being a Buddhist, being someone who fares for the truth, what it needs to look like. And we all of us, those of us who are trying to practice Buddhism, to the degree we're trying to practice Buddhism, we're trying to wear these three robes. And you need all three. You can't just have one. You need all three. And eventually, if you keep practicing and wearing those robes and living up to those robes, because of course costume is easy to put on, and you see how even Buddhist costume is easy to put on. If you can live the truth of those robes, you'll eventually end up Padmasambhava. Yeah. So what's striking about one of the first things that you notice about images of Padmasambhava, you won't particularly so much notice it here, but any time you bring Padmasambhava to mind, you always think of the colour red. Actually, he wears three robes: red, yellow, and blue, which is what I'll explore this evening. But you always think of the colour red. If you had to say what colour is Padmasambhava, it was always red, and that's because the outer robe, which is, literally speaking, is a meditation shawl. Really, it's like a meditation cloak that you wear, or in Tibet you can actually see them. They've got all these pleats, and they keep you very warm. That's clearly what it comes from. But any figure wearing a red flowing cloak, it's absurd to just think of it literally in historical terms. And even if it isn't, I'm not terribly interested in the history or the literal. They're truths, and undoubtedly, but they're not so important truths. So it's interesting that we always think of Padmasambhava as red. Red is the colour of blood, primarily. That's a primary symbol of red, and therefore it comes to mean the colour of love, doesn't it? And the colour of the heart. All of those metaphors all go together: blood, heart, love. Interestingly, it's also the colour of danger, because again of blood, because blood is spilt, that's very dangerous. It's the colour that shouts out to the human eye very much, doesn't it? It's the opposite of green. The human eye can read more shades of green than any other colour. So I don't know anything much about the human eye, but you can imagine how therefore red is the opposite, so that therefore creates danger. Yeah. So this colour red is about you're being confronted with something that's alive, that's alive in a heartfelt, hearty way. Yeah. So when when you're a Buddhist to any degree, and when you meet someone who's a Buddhist to any degree, what you're looking for is someone alive, alive to themselves and alive to you. Hopefully, not someone trying to improve you, not someone who's trying to correct you, not someone who's trying to persuade you. What you'd hope to meet is someone very alive. They could be very alive in all kinds of different ways. Like Bhante himself, he's incredible, the most alive man I've ever met, I think. But in a very quiet way, in a very still, quiet way. So yes, you've got this aliveness and you've got this love. So what Buddhism means is, first of all, love, isn't it? It's me reaching out to connect with you and you reaching out to connect with each other. It's particularly love in the sense of friendship. It's not love so much in the sense of romantic love, although I don't think it's dismissive of that. It's just trying to say, well, even romantic love, to do that well, you need to be a friend. You need to act like a friend, which includes giving your partner their independence. But yes, anything that is genuinely Buddhist has got this atmosphere of love about it. Not in the sentimental way, not in a sort of sweet and sticky way, because remember, it's blood, so it's also to do with life, and it's to do with courage. It's to do with being outward looking. One of the great dangers of Buddhism in the West is it gets terribly inward looking and even self-preoccupied, and even, I think, at times, if you practice it wrongly, self-problematizing. You can start to think of meditation and mindfulness as sort of scrutinizing the contents of every volition you've got and trying to lay them bare to the light of reason and awareness. And that's unhelpful, I think. I've come to think more and more that that's unhelpful. So yeah, the first thing you want is this love, this warmth, this reaching out to people, this also this comfort. The reason I dwell on this a bit is that red is also the colour of warmth, and all that means. So sort of comfort, someone that you just want to like being around, that atmosphere that you feel. We just a few of us had supper together in our community, and I wasn't teaching tonight. I didn't think I was teaching that. In fact, I forgot about doing this. And we can all just sit around, and I felt, I don't know what Dave felt, but I thought there was just lots of love present at the table. It's not because we're saying anything loving. Actually, mostly we're having a laugh. So I want red to also be the colour of laughter, but it's that sort of. So do you see how it's not, oh, I love you, and it's not, oh, it's just, I just want to be with you guys. Yeah, it's just something very implicit. It doesn't need to be dragged into explicit reason. If you're enjoying with people, you don't think, why am I enjoying being with them? Well, there's this reason, that reason, that reason. You just are, yeah. So I want red also to be the colour of the colour of implicit meanings, not explicit ones. It's a bit confusing because you'd expect that to be the inner robe, but what I've been feeling more and more is that if we're not careful, and I've partly got this because I recently interviewed Ian McGilchrist, whose book The Master and His Emissaries has got everything to say that I think can really kind of, well, we don't need support, but that really underlines what we're trying to do. I mean, in using brain science to back that up, I'd really recommend it. But one of the things he was talking about is how, if we're not careful, we lose touch with implicit meanings. You can imagine in the metaphor of a poem where all the metaphors, all the meanings implicit, and you try and sort of drag the meaning out of it, decontextualize it from the poem itself, and just say, oh well, it just says this. Yeah, that we're trying to make everything explicit, and a lot of the Dharma life is to do with implicit teachings, as it were, implicit meanings, not to do with explicit ones. If we're not careful, we'll turn the Dharma life into somebody like me, giving somebody like you lots of handy lots of handy tips online, lots of little explicit teachings of things that you can do to change your life. Now, there's some value in that. I'm not wanting to dismiss that. But a lot of Buddhism is not to be found in that. It's to be found in implicit understandings, especially in community. The implicit understandings of friends with friends. Like we were just laughing around the table, saying all kinds of naughty things, but we have an implicit understanding of each other, which becomes a kind of love, I suppose. Do you see what I mean? When in a genuine community, there's a lot of just implicit stuff going on. We like to be together. We're practicing. We can be serious. We can have a laugh. We can connect with each other. If somebody's down, somebody can help. But it's not all dragged into something explicit. It's even talking about it weirdly makes it explicit. It's a sense of living with people, communal, sharing values, sharing aspirations, sharing a joke, for heaven's sake. Do you see that that's all implicit? But its colouring is red. Its colouring is connection with other people. I think this is also true of place. I've just come back from a time in Cornwall, and I used to go to Cornwall as a child. In fact, I've been going to Cornwall off and on for 50 years, I worked out. I went back to the Meadery in Newlyn, which hasn't changed a bit in 50 years. It's incredible. It's not like the past, it is the past. Anyway, I was really struck by how beautiful I found Cornwall again. Actually, my family holidays there were very unhappy, but somehow the place of Cornwall is in my blood somehow. I feel a kind of nostalgia for it. It's as if I was brought up there. As soon as I got there, I'd forgotten how beautiful it was. So implicit meanings are also to do with place. They're to do with home, whether that home is literally a home or where you feel at home. When someone says, I feel at very home, people even say, I feel at home with you. So place is to do with feeling at a home. So you can feel at a home in yourself. You can, like I feel very much at home in my community, but I also felt very at home in Cornwall. Where you come, like the landscape that I come from Warwickshire. And it's part of my bones, it's part of my blood, So the first thing you meet with Padmasambhava is this warmth, and I want this warmth to be to do with being part of community, not in some sort of small sense, not being part of a club or something, being part of, I suppose you'd have to call it spiritual community, but I'm never keen on that word spiritual, it always sounds a bit flaky to me. Just part of a heartfelt connection with others, and a heartfelt connection with place, a heartfelt connection with culture and history, and all of that a bit alive. Not a dry, dusty thing, but something alive, something that's shared with friends around a table. Yeah, easy things to not value. It's a bit. This whole thing of implicit meaning is a bit like this issue of the natural world. You don't realise it's having an effect on you. But most of us now are just so alienated from it. We don't realise how alienated we are from it. You know what it's like? Going back to the sea and just feeling closer to the natural world again. You feel a kind of, oh, it's so good to be in relation again. So this red of Padmasambhava's road is about him, the warmth of that road glowing out into relation, into community, into culture, into history, into time and place. Yeah. All those implicit meanings that we could all trust much, much more, rather than thinking that we have to drag everything into the cold glare of rationality and examine whether our motives are suspect or whether, which we can easily do, I think. At least I can easily do. So that's the red robe, and that's just start you off with a red robe. So we need to have that robe. We need to be part of a living community, and a living community that's part of the world. Actually, particularly part of the natural world, because Buddhist vision of the natural world would be that the natural world is alive, and that if you're in touch with the natural world, it makes you more alive. Yeah? But then inside the red robe is this yellow patched robe of a monk. Yeah, you can't see it a bit. Can't even see it in that picture so much. But yeah, you've got the monk's patched robe underneath the red robe. So first of all, you meet Buddhism. What you see, hopefully, is warmth, is community, is friendship, is welcome, is host. A host that's welcoming you. What I hope you meet when you first meet Buddhism is someone saying, "Come in, come in if you want to. Don't come in if you don't want to. Stay as long as you like. Learn what you want. Make friends. Yeah, you can tell the truth here. You can make mistakes here. You can learn things here. Yeah." But then inside of that, once you've got into that warmth, what you start to meet is the yellow robe of the monk. And remember, they got sort of sweetened, these yellow robes now. But the monk, the robe that the Buddha would have worn would have been literally a robe made out of rags sewn together, like dishcloths, sort of things you clean the floor with, sewn together and soaked in yellow mud to make them absolutely worthless, so they're not even worth anything as rags. And then you'd wear that. That's what the Buddha was wearing, something like that, or the early disciples were wearing. They weren't wearing these sort of gorgeous things that you see now. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but you see, immediately that's a metaphor for renunciation. It's a metaphor for of being not. So we've already had in the red, I think, a metaphor for being in the world, for being connected, for being loving, for reaching out. Now we have a metaphor for being out of the world. Yeah. The yellow robe is about leaving the world. It's about leaving worldly preoccupations, leaving behind worldly attitudes. I think one of the things I want to add to that now is leaving behind worldly dogmas and ideologies, leaving behind moralism, any kind of moralism. There's always a new moralism on the block. But the yellow robe is about the discipline of training. Yeah. So the first thing you see is the warmth. Then you see, to get that kind of warmth and that connectedness, you need discipline. Not something that we're all very warm about, but absolutely essential robe. You can't, if you don't wear this robe, you won't be able to wear the red robe either, really. So the yellow robe is about renunciation. It's about leaving the world behind. And that doesn't necessarily mean literally, of course. But it means, I think, particularly leaving behind worldly outlooks. Or at least a better way might be putting it is saying looking at things more and more from the point of view of the Dharma, not from the point of view of, ideology, theory, and so on. One of the things that Ian McGilchrist was saying in the interview with Jan Vacher, or I can't remember which one, who was saying what's happening is more and more people are getting life to fit their theories about life. And I thought that was very trenchant, that if we're not careful, we're so stuck in our theories and ideologies and constructs about life that we make life fit it. And it's never supposed to be that way. Life is supposed to keep breaking up our ideologies. Ideologies are like fossilized thought. They're the opposite of poetry, I think. Poetry is language at its most suggestive. Ideology is its most fossilized. Any kind of ideology, I think. But it's very difficult to live without ideology. I think human beings probably need things need it to some degree because it makes them feel secure in a world which isn't secure. So it's not hard to understand why we take refuge in ideology. But wearing the yellow robe means letting go of that. It means renouncing that. It means actually saying things like, tell you what, I really don't know what I think about this issue. I've been struck by, we watched a program recently about how Facebook and all these things are giving you the kind of thing you want to hear. So if you're on the right, you'll hear more and more videos from the right, and if you're on the left, you get more and more videos from the left. So that your prejudices, your views are actually being strengthened and entrenched. What wearing the yellow robe might be saying, I don't know, there's something on that side and there's something on that side. I don't know what I think about it. I haven't thought about it deeply enough. Or what do you think about it? In that kind of open space, yeah. So yes, this yellow robe means a renunciation of the world, of worldly attitudes, of worldly outlooks, of it also means that simple thing of renouncing, if you're really going to wear this robe, saying, do you really think career, family, then retirement, do you really think that's it? Is that what you're going to do? Is that going to be your contribution? Now, for many people, that's a fine contribution to make. And many people, that would be a real achievement to make that contribution. But to wear the robes, you're trying to make more of a contribution than that to your own life and to the life of those around you. So, of course, it also means renouncing that kind of worldly life, particularly things like status, success, failure even. They're all sort of worldly things, really. So when you think you're failing at meditation, you're just falling back into a worldly mindset. Meditation is not something you can win or fail at. It's an exploration, isn't it, of your mind. So the other thing to say about the yellow robe is it's the radical edge. I mean, the Buddha traditionally was a prince. I mean, who knows? But he's traditionally a prince. So he gives away his gorgeous clothes, cuts his hair, and wears the robes of a beggar. He swaps his robe with a beggar, gives the beggar his princely clothes, and puts on the beggar's clothes. And I always wonder what happened to the beggar, and wanders off dressed as a prince. What could happen? Anyway, so do you see how that really is a metaphor for being really radical? It's about saying, no, I'm not just going to go along with. I'm going to be radical about my life. I'm not just going to go along with things. I am going to search for the truth. That's what the Buddha put that robe on for, was to search for the truth, and he really meant it. He didn't just say, I'll search for the truth until I find somewhere comfy. He said, I'm going to search for the truth, and I'll either find the truth or I'll die looking. That's a, exquisitely Buddhist attitude, and it might feel a bit tough, but then Buddhism is tough. If you want something less confronting than Buddhism, try cinema. Anyway, I don't know if I should be careful of my sense of humour. But you see what I mean? It's a radical robe. It's really a robe that's saying, I'm going to search for the truth and I'm not going to give up. And easy to say perhaps when you're young, but as you get older, as I've got older, you notice how difficult that is to keep going with. And I feel now the lure of more comforts in some ways than I ever did, partly because they would be comfortable for me now. When I was younger, I was too unhappy for even comforts to be comfortable. But also I can feel as I get older that it's more and more difficult to, your habits get deeper. It's more and more difficult to feel you can make progress with yourself. You lose that early inspirations and so on. Keeping going, searching for the truth. God, that's much more of an arse than you think. So yeah, you need to wear that robe. You need to wear the robe of a renunciant, of the truth seeker, of a radical. Yeah. But so what you've got there, I think, in the two robes there, looking at Padmasambhava, is a contradiction. You've got a flowing red cope of love that reaches out to the world, out to community, out to friends, out to the natural world, out to a suffering world. And then you've got a robe that's about renouncing the world, leaving the world behind. Renouncing the world. So they can't go together. They cause, they're opposites. One of the things about Padmasambhava is that he's one of the great metaphors about Padmasambhava. He's about the unification of opposites. Opposites, something really important about the unification of opposites, which I've never quite got my head around, but that's what Padmasambhava stands for. And one way of thinking about that is that they're unified by the third robe, the innermost robe, the robe that Padmasambhava wears, as it were, next to his skin, which is the blue robe, a sea blue robe, a sky blue robe. Interesting, you've got that. You end up where you get the red of the fire, the yellow of the earth, of the clay that was used to make those rag robes go yellow. Then you've got the blue of the sea, the blue of the sky, and of course the metaphor of blue is always like the metaphor of red is blood. The metaphor of the blue, of course, is the sky and the sea, and the metaphor of the sky and the sea is infinity. Is that the sky never starts, it never ends. The sea, at least in one's imagination, is infinite. Of course, it's not literally, but then nothing's literal. I was just coming back from Cornwall, and the beautiful blue of the sea. We had beautiful weather, and I was standing looking at the sea, and seeing the sea crash against the rocks, the beauty of that, and the danger of the picturesque about that. But all you need to do if you're in fear of the picturesque is just look up at the horizon, and you suddenly see, actually, this sea would be terrifying if all I could see was that horizon. We find the sea beautiful and picturesque from land, from the beach, don't we? We've beachified the sea. We've turned it into a surfing school, which is the whole of Cornwall seems to have become. All the better for it, I'm sure. But when you look at the horizon, and if you imagine that was all you could see, it's really terrifying and then kind of inhuman. It's like an utterly other world, the sea. The metaphor of the sea is the fact that all these creatures live in it and you couldn't. So it's like an alien world. It's utterly other to you, doesn't it? The metaphor of the sea is as otherness. And the sky, there's only so much of it, and there's not much of it you can actually breathe in. So you've got this metaphor of something that's infinite, and this metaphor of something that's other, that's beautiful but other. So this is the deep blue robe of usually the Vajrayana, because of course the traditional meaning of the robes is that the red robe is a robe of the Mahayana, the yellow robe is a robe of the so-called Hinayana or the Theravada, and the blue robe is the robe of the Vajrayana. All the great stages of Buddhism. Really, they're all there. I think the Buddha, I don't think metaphorically the Buddha wore all those three robes. Any Buddhist, to the degree that they're a Buddhist, and that's a hard thing to be, being a Buddhist, is wearing a rag or two of those three robes. Yeah? So the Vajrayana robe comes to mean, the Vajrayana came to emphasize direct seeing of how things really are. Yeah? That's its primary thing, primary emphasis. If the Mahayana's primary emphasis is on the Bodhisattva ideal of universal loving kindness, of metta, but particularly the Bodhisattva ideal is a primary emphasis of the Mahayana. If the Theravada's primary emphasis is on things like mindfulness, restraint, discipline, ethics, meditation, and so on, then the Vajrayana's primary emphasis is on direct awareness of reality. Yeah. So this blue robe, which is like a royal robe, is also, for me, a magician's robe. I like to imagine it embroidered with dragons. So this is the robe of mystery. It's the robe of infinity. Because remember, the sea metaphor is that it's other to you, something other to you. So against Padmasambhava's skin is the blue of the ocean or the blue of the sky, something that you can never stand in, something that you can never shore up, something that's utterly free, boundless, but unsecured, insecure, yeah? Somewhere where you can never build a palace, somewhere free and open. Yeah. So it's a metaphor for reality itself. For Shunyata, obviously, is imagined as the blue sky. But you see, it's a metaphor for absolute freedom, edgelessness, and so on. So the final thing I want to say about that, and then we'll finish, is that another way I start to think of it now, and this isn't very Buddhist, but bear with me. I want that robe to be not only the royal robe, but the robe of the divinity. Now, Buddhism doesn't believe in any kind of divinity. It doesn't believe in any creator God. It has no truck with that at all. But if we're not careful, we think, oh, then it's secular. Because in the Western tradition, particularly after the Reformation, what you ended up with is this divide between the secular and the divine. So a church was divine and a library could be secular, and that was very important in the history of Europe, at least, and of America, and the breaking of church and state. But if we're not careful, we start to think that really exists, that there's a divine and a secular. And some people say that they're interested in secular mindfulness and even horror upon horror, secular Buddhism. And the divine gets sort of, pushed off into this frightening world called religion. Buddhism has no distinction between divine and secular. There's no such thing. It's a thoroughly Christian idea. But you see, if we've somehow still got that idea, we'll basically put a ceiling on our imagination. We'll think, okay, yeah, it's fine to have an imagination, but we won't let that reach up into experiences which would be, at least in other traditions, described as mystical or as the nature of the divine, and so on. They're absolutely at the heart of things. You're not practicing discipline to become disciplined. You're not loving others just to be a nice person. You're doing all of that so that you can enter into this new consciousness that from our point of view now would seem divine. It's not divine in the sense of it being another consciousness that's different from us and separate to us, like God up there on a cloud, if anyone believes that. It's not the literal divine, but it does feel like the ocean and other to us. And if you meet it very strongly, it feels completely other to us. It's not. It's actually strange. It's beyond us, but not separate to us, is the clearest way of putting it. It's beyond us, but not separate to us. At this historical moment, I'd want to tilt it towards divine. I think it has that taste, more than the taste, if we want to use these old terms that really Buddhism has never used. If we want to use those terms, it has more of that taste than the taste of the secular. It has, in other words, a taste of mystery, of even of, in some way, revelation, that there's a consciousness that goes beyond you, that's not separate to you, which seems to both completely fulfill you and you die in it at the same time. You can't really explain it. You can't. Again, I'm not careful. I'm trying to make implicit things explicit. But that's what Padmasambhava's wearing to his skin. You could say Buddha consciousness, or shunyata, or mystery, or poetically the divine. A new consciousness that makes sense of the contradiction between the red robe that's reaching out to the world in love and the yellow robe that's moving away from the world in wisdom. The only thing that can really solve that contradiction is the blue robe of Shunyata, the blue robe of this new consciousness. So to the degree you listening to this now are a Buddhist, you need to wear all of those three robes. And what I've tried to do in my own practice is try to wear those robes as much as I can. I don't wear them anywhere near enough. Anyway, let's not go there, but I don't, nor do you, just to be clear. But that's what we're trying to do. And just see how Padmasambhava is an image for how when that becomes complete and you can really wear those 3 robes. So I hope that's a useful way of starting to think about Padmasambhava. Everything, I mean, I haven't even talked about the things he holds and the fact he's holding a skull and a Khatvanga, which is actually a Darkini female figure turned into a flaming trident. We haven't even touched on those things yet, and we're not going to, don't worry. But I hope that gives you something on this Padmasambhava Day in Brixton to think about, but not just think about, but live out, especially live out its implicit meanings. You know, have you got me or not? It's the real question, not would I agree with that, and do you think that was a bad joke? But do you get what I'm trying to say? Yeah, that's what we mean by the implicit. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. Well, what a fantastic talk from Maitreyabandhu there. I mean, I should have sort of introduced Maitreyabandhu a little bit more before the talk, but you know, he's a very experienced teacher up at the London Buddhist Centre, and many of you will probably have come across his books and his courses, so it's quite common. But yeah, really wonderful talk, really rich and wonderful talk. So anyway, I'll get into that with you in a moment. I'm just going to do some shout outs to people, just to say who we've got joining us. So we've got Joe, Godipe, I hope I've got your name right. Lisa D, Gunam, Pamela, or Alex B, Sagrasila, Emma, and Geeta in the chat room. So yeah, really lovely to have you with us. It's really good, isn't it? Because it just makes you suddenly feel like there's actually sort of a community there.
Real people out there.
People,
yeah. This little camera.
So if there's anything you want us to talk about, there's a very rich talk, lots in there. I mean, we'll probably launch in a moment and just see where we want to go. If there's anything you'd like to hear from us, do write a comment in the chat box and we'll try and...
or any questions.
Yeah. Try and get around to it. Yeah. So, first impressions?
Well, I mean, I really love this, what he ended up with this sort of, this do you get me? You know, this sort of implicit meaning, because in a way, I guess that was the teaching was, can you imagine how, or can you get a sense of how this blue robe represents the resolution of this contradiction between reaching out to the world, represented by the red robe, and then renouncing the world, withdrawing from the world, which obviously is a contradiction. So he's saying, but can you see how from this mysterious even divine consciousness represented by the blue, the sea blue robe, there's no contradiction, which is actually the way Sangha has talked about the resolution of sort of spiritual problems, if you like, is you have to grow bigger than them. Actually, I'm in danger of making the implicit explicit, aren't I? So let's not do that. But I really loved that sort of climax of the talk, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly sort of makes sense to me experientially. I mean, I was sort of thinking that, you know, my red robe is probably in slightly better repair than my yellow robe.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, sort of, I'm all up for the kind of external in a way, but when it comes to sort of the renunciation, like, I don't want to, you know, I've done a fair bit of that in my life, but certainly I lead with the red, you know, I lead with the external, and there's a bit of a spiritual problem there in a way, you know, and God, it just sort of feels like, I guess, you know, I imagine a lot of people experience a kind of time crunch. How do I find time to meditate? How do I find time to do this? How do I find time to do that? There's a bit of a intractable spiritual problem, doesn't it, in a way? And how do I give justice to this and this and that and that and that? And it's like, well, it sort of makes sense that one needs to grow beyond it. You know?
Yes.
Maybe obviously that's an oversimplification. The act of growing beyond it is something a bit greater than.
Well, we have. I mean, Bhante had this teaching of. I think it was you mentioned it the other night at dinner. Intensive engagement, intensive withdrawal. So there is something you can do as well, rather than just waiting for this kind of moment of, this eruption of the divine consciousness. Though if you're lucky, I was going to say if you're lucky that happens, it can be quite shattering as well. But one can sort of just intensively engage with, as you call it, external life, the life of people, of the world, of of love in a way. You really kind of engage with that intensively. Rather than a half-hearted way, but also intensive withdrawal. Whether it's going on retreat, not very easy at the moment, of course, but going on, or just our daily meditation practice. Bhante's talked about as our daily solitary retreat.
That's sort of interesting. It sort of suggests that one can put a robe on, at least temporarily. We might not be able to kind of wear the sort of blue robe or the yellow robe all the time, but we might be able to kind of wear it for a while.
Yes, that's interesting. It's a sequential thing. Obviously, Padmasambhava wears them all the time, but he's Padmasambhava. So yes, that's right.
Well, I was thinking about in a certain way the ceremonies tonight, and I am literally going to wear my blue ordination robe. So, but because for me that represents that point where I was most in touch with that kind of infinite consciousness or something. Of course, I don't inhabit that space all the time. But when I'm leading a ritual and watching people commit, like we're going to be doing later on, again, I feel most in touch with that. And of course, I have to take it off because I can't wear it for very long. But do you know what I mean? There's
probably wear it whilst watching Netflix or something, or eating a hot dog. No,
it doesn't feel right somehow. But I mean, there's both a literal and a metaphorical kind of thing there, isn't there? But I guess we can sort of, in a way, practice putting on those robes for a short amount of time. Like the yellow robe during meditation or on retreat.
That's right.
Blue robe when we're engaging with something a bit more transcendental.
Yes.
A bit beyond our kind of mundane mind.
Yeah.
The red robe would be like external activity, altruistic activity.
Yeah, I think it's important to add that in as well. It's not just engagement with the world, is it? It's activity based on love, didn't he? He talks about blood, and one of the words he's blood, heart, danger, warmth, friendship. I love this idea of, Buddhists as being intensely alive, living for the truth. So I guess that aspect, the red robe, is alive with love and interest. And striking is that we know when somebody's really listening to us and when they're really present to us, and how unsatisfactory it is when they're not. And unsatisfactory for us when we're not quite present. I feel that certainly if I'm trying to wash up while somebody's telling me something really important, I feel that tension there. So just in terms of external activity, engaging the world, that blood, that heart being present.
That really makes sense, doesn't it? I found the kind of connection with danger as well very interesting. That there's a kind of mixture in there in a way. And I wondered, he didn't mention it, but I slightly wondered whether the kind of the combining element is something to do with risk. We need to sort of take risk in friendship or putting ourselves out there or something. I mean, it's interesting, he was talking about having a laugh with his friends in a way, and his community mates. And we live in community here as well, and I really resonate with that kind of connection, and it feels like a little bit like there's a playfulness that feels a little bit risky at times, but it does somehow feel energetic. Or, do you know what I mean? Like a bit like you can just be, you can be a bit more just relaxed with your friends. You can just kind of just be who you are. You're not trying to protect yourself. You're just being open, and maybe you overstep the mark sometimes. You have to say sorry, but at least you're able to just...
Well, there's enough trust and rapport there that people will forgive you if you do overstep. And I think that's a really good precept for friendship is taking risks in communication. I know when my first entree into Buddhism really was door-to-door fundraising for our work in India. And that was always the teaching, was take risks. Definitely don't go up to the door and just say what you always say. Like, just notice what's going on for you before you knock the door. When the door opens, notice what's happening for the person. Are their hands covered in dishwater, bubbles, or are they, are the kids? Notice what's going on, and then just take a risk and say what comes in your head, even if it's, wow, those kids sound like they're really out of control. And then anyway, for me that really made me come alive, and then that made them want to talk to me, because most people, of course, don't want to talk to a door-to-door fundraiser. So there was something like that. There was a real lesson for friendship, actually, about taking risks in communication. So I'm very grateful, actually, to a guy called Jai Raja who first trained me in that way to really take risks, and he certainly does. You know, and he makes mistakes sometimes. He gets in trouble, and then he has to mend it. But there's never any doubt that people find him alive, really alive presence. I certainly did, and that's one of the reasons I got involved more seriously in all this.
It does somehow feel more fruitful, doesn't it, to take the risk and make the mistake and tidy it up and play it safe, and like from a spiritual point of view. I mean, I guess all of us had to walk into a Buddhist centre for the first time, and that felt risky as well. You know, you didn't know what's the unknown, you know, and got the stories going on in your mind, and yet you walk in and you know all of that. Like I'm sure we're all familiar with that, taking that risk in a way.
Maybe some of you walked past the door several times before you actually came in. I've heard that from many people.
And maybe actually now, I guess the equivalent is just watching online, and at some point you have to
go in the chat box.
Or go in the chat box, connect with us, or even come to a class. Come to an actual class.
Which you can now do.
I might pause you and just check for questions anyway. See if we've got. So I didn't say hi to Maitreyabandhu. We're very sorry Maitreyabandhu's not able to join us. He's a bit unwell. So.
Oh, glad you're well enough to watch.
Really thinking of you, Maitreyabandhu. And Vajratara as well is tuning in, and we've got Alina as well saying hello. So there's a question from Vajratara. How can we practice the red robe, love, friendship, community under these conditions and the possibility of further lockdown? And Maitreyabandhu adds, how can you engage with any of these robes under these conditions?
Any of them? Well, not just the red, but the other two as well. That would give us plenty to work with. Thank you, Maitreyabandhu.
Well, we've talked a bit about the red robe, so I guess the question is, maybe we've sort of answered it in a way, but under these conditions, under the idea of lockdown, where maybe people can't leave their houses,
right, and they may live alone. I mean, I'm sure some of our friends here do.
Yeah. How might people practice the red robe of friendship, of love? I mean, I've got a little something.
Go on.
Which is just maybe appreciating people a bit more. Now, I put my hands up. I'm not very good at friendship. I'm not very good at keeping up with people. But I got a message from a friend this morning asking. We used to speak on a monthly basis. So she moved up to Scotland or something, and she got in touch and said, "Hey, could we catch up?" And I thought, "Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
it'd be great. Yeah." So schedule a little Zoom call or something. But it's just like taking that. I think for me anyway, a personal precept is kind of making the effort a bit more, taking that initial step. I really need to meet up with Maitreyabandhu, who ordained me, and a good friend of mine, Jan Varch, I really want to see as well. And I need to initiate that. Do you know what I mean? I need to initiate that. So for me anyway, there's a precept of initiating, making the time to initiate. And I was thinking about Maitreyabandhu. It's very nice of Maitreyabandhu to do this talk, and I thought, I want to write him a card. Say thank you. But of course, so easy for those things just to get lost in the busyness. So it's like, no, make time. Make time for those little things. I mean, it's probably only like 20 minutes, isn't it? But I could. But those things matter to people.
Yeah, sure.
Those things really matter. And it's it's an expression of. I guess it's. I can feel those things, but I've then got to express it.
Yes.
I can feel appreciation, but I've got to say thank you. Or I can feel a connection with my friends, but I've actually got to make time for them.
Yes. Yeah, I've been listening to you and also thinking, God, how do you practice the red robe friendship when you're stuck at home all day, especially if you live on your own? I mean, of course, there's the Maitreyabandhu, and that goes without saying. I mean, even I notice when I try and go out for a walk, I'm sure, like many of us, once a day, and when I see people around, I notice the instinctive thing, of course, is to avoid people. Obviously, we're trying to physically avoid people. There's a lot of this kind of, moving around, going, just keep your metre or two. But I was actually just trying today to, what I noticed is that can lead to a kind of inner or emotional cutting off from people as well. So I was trying to work against that a bit today by just having a sense of all the people in the park, and wishing them well. So in some sense, even if one is living alone or not having much social contact, of course, there's the whole rich inner world. You know, I mean, Maitreyabandhu talks so much about metaphor and implicit meaning. What he's talking about, of course, is the inner world, and that's where most of our life happens. I don't know if that's true. It just came out of my mouth, but in a way, in a certain way, that's where all of our life happens. Is through the filter of our mind. So I know we all know Padmasambhava, but anyway, there's one thought on the red road.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we talk about social distancing, don't we? But we're not really interested in social distancing. We're just interested in physical distancing.
Yes,
so coronavirus can't kind of pass between us. But God, if we want to socially distance, that's really bad, isn't it? I mean, I think might be slightly going through a sort of mental health crisis at the moment with people. So you hear so many people are struggling, and
I think in some ways I would say everyone I know is struggling. Or just not everyone. Actually, there's one guy I was talking to yesterday who said he doesn't want lockdown. He doesn't want to go back to normal. He's loving just being home all the time. But he's been meditating for 40 years, putting him aside. I would say most of the people I know are having a hard time in some way, and just I guess recognising that, appreciating what we can, and wishing people well, and ourselves well. We will come through this, and we do have the opportunity to grow through it as well. If we approach with that kind of attitude.
But I guess it's a question at what cost, in a way. I guess my great fear is that somehow society becomes more alienated from one another. So I think just like you're saying, as Buddhists, I think actually we've got a duty to try and bring that warmth in as much as possible to the stranger. In a metaphorical.
It's still possible. You're right.
Yeah,
it's still possible. I don't know if are we going to try and tackle Mike Charles' question, how to practice the yellow and the blue robe?
It's quite a big question, isn't it?
It's a big question.
Maybe we should leave it floating because there's another question.
Oh, there's another question.
Another question. Sorry, Maitreyabandhu. But you can chip in the chat box and tell people what you think. So we've got a guy called Bright Like the Morning Star, which is a lovely name, isn't it? Good evening, guys. My question: how do you practice compassion and love to people in situations that seek to take advantage of you or hold no love for you? Is there anything to gain to love an enemy?
Can you read it again? How do you practice love and compassion in a situation
I presume people or situations that seek to take advantage of you or hold no love for you? Is there anything to gain to love an enemy?
Well, arguably there's the most to gain from loving an enemy. The Dalai Lama famously, when asked about Chairman Mao, said he was his best friend. Why? Because it allows one to practice the awakened quality, or the perfection, as it's known, of patience, of forbearance, which doesn't sound like a really exciting spiritual quality, but actually is absolutely crucial. In a way, the only power our enemies have over us is when we don't have patience and we get angry or we commit rash acts that actually cause us trouble. That's the only power an enemy has over us. I mean, I guess an enemy, literally, if they were violent to us or able to, but in terms of mental suffering, that's up to us. I'm saying this a little bit glibly, but it is actually the Dharmic perspective on enemies. And if I don't know if Bright Light has, I don't know if you've practiced the Metta-bhavana, perhaps not, but that's explicitly the fourth stage of the practice that we do, is we bring to mind somebody who's really we really dislike, the enemy in a way, and it's a bit much probably to love them. I think that probably is asking a bit much of most of us. We're not really actually the Dalai Lama, so we can't call our enemy our best friend, but at least to kind of be with them physically, literally, or at least in our imagination, and not go down the usual tracks of hatred, irritation, and upset and so forth, and somehow also without cutting off from our experience. It's not easy to do, but the fruit are I think are really great.
And I was thinking that what the problem is that kind of escalation of reaction, isn't it? Sort of ill will just perpetuating. And all the great kind of tragedies of human society, the wars and genocides, are basically been created out of that kind of escalating
Yes,
ill
yes.
will between
Yeah.
people or groups of people.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're aspiring to do as Buddhists is short circuit that. We're trying
Yeah.
to stop that perpetuating.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's never going to be any end of people that probably want to take advantage of us,
Yes,
or,
yes.
you know, whatever, you know, the dukkha is just ever present,
Yes,
suffering
yes,
is ever present, but we want to try and not respond to that. I guess it's also, it's worth bringing in that clarification that we're not being doormats.
That's
still.
right, yeah.
You know, one must speak clearly and,
Yes.
you know, be.
You don't have to let yourself be taken advantage of. That's not the teaching, is it?
That's right, yeah. But as you rightly say, the only thing we've got control over is our reaction.
Yeah.
You know, which is it's not going to help us to react. It's never.
No.
You know, there's someone taking advantage of us. It's never going to be the right action to react back.
No.
You know, if we've got the space and clarity to not react, then we can take a creative response.
Yeah.
You know, we can handle a situation differently, and I guess it then means that we are in a better position to stop us being taken advantage of.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that doesn't sound too idealistic. Obviously, this is a working ground for any of us. We've all got people or situations in our lives that we don't enjoy and where maybe feel taken advantage of or abused in some way. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that this is obviously, you know, it's quite a high goal to take this kind of attitude, but it is I agree, it's a crucial working ground for actual real freedom. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not easy, is it? It's not easy, you know. I guess most of the time you're just kind of, often if you find yourself reacting, mainly just after the event, you're thinking, oh, okay, that wasn't so good in a way. I'll try and do better next time. But at least that's the start of transformation, I guess. Eventually you get better and better at it, and you know, one is more patient and well, that's a theory anyway. But yeah, one is more patient and spacious when those things happen.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more. Maybe we should let's take another question. Question from Alex B. Thanks, Alex. When I look at the image of Padmasambhava, I interpret his expression, energy, and accessories seem quite serious and stern, fearsome almost. Yet he is intended to relate to love, compassion, and the great Amitabha lineage. Why is that? What else is it about the image that represents those elements?
That represents the more loving elements.
Those elements. I guess he's talking about, so he's quite a fearsome figure. He's got a stern look on his face, and you know, he's holding skull cups and tridents and so on. Yeah, he's associated with love. Why is that? Yeah,
they call it the wrathful smile, don't they? Padmasambhava's wrathful smile. Although I mean, I've heard Maitreyabandhu very strongly sort of counteract the idea that Padmasambhava is a frightening figure. Although I say, totally understand why you think that. He's got 3 skulls, hasn't he, on his Katvanga in various stages of rotting.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you saw a guy walking down the street with that, you wouldn't think love. So I do understand the question. How to answer it though?
Well, I wonder if it's a matter of perspective. I wonder if, in a way, the blue robe answers it, because you know, they talked about the blue robe of infinity.
Yes.
But Maitreyabandhu talked about the blue robe of infinity, and you know, that image of the ocean being terrifying. You know, being outside of land and it being like an alien landscape, and it can seem terrifying.
Yeah.
But from another perspective, it represents infinity, ultimate potential, the enlightened mind. If you see what I mean. So I wonder if it's a kind of matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if it's a matter that, from our perspective, it's like going beyond ourselves and living beyond certainty somehow feels a bit, you know, you have to break through, you have to use the energy, you have to use the, almost like, you know, take the weapons and take the thing, break through. Yeah. And the experience on the other side of that is one of great compassion and depth. So I wonder if it's, I mean, maybe that's a bit of a kind of an elaborative leap in a way, but I wonder if it has something to do with that. You know, we need that energy and almost that power to break through into something, to love in a way, to really love.
Well, we need that kind of challenge in a way. I'd say that expression is one of challenge. I mean, personally, I do see it as a kindly gaze as well, but it is one of challenge, which is exactly what you're pointing to. That, you know, we talk about spiritual death as one of the 5 stages or the 5 aspects of the spiritual life. Death isn't something we generally seek. It's weird. We say we want a different life, we want to change, we want to grow, but actually that means the older self dying, which we basically also don't want. We want comfort. I really relate to what you were saying about, as you get older, seeking comfort. God, the kind of comforts I want now, which really wouldn't have bothered me 20 years ago, it's really striking. They do say there's no revolutionary like an old revolutionary, which I didn't used to understand, but now I do. I really have a lot of respect for order members, Buddhists who are still at it in their 60s and 70s, still going at it. So anyway, so I think there's a challenge in that expression as well. But I suppose, Alex, you'd have to sort of really dwell on the figure and see if something else comes through, something in a way beyond the first impression of that expression. Something of the love of the red robe. I mean, it may just not be the figure for you. I mean, or it may be different times in your life. Like I've had phases where I've really connected strongly with Padmasambhava, and other times where I haven't particularly.
I wonder if there's a little clue in the kind of legend as well, because he's often called the demon tamer, isn't he? And the legend of Padmasambhava is that he travels to Tibet to tame these demons to basically help a Buddhist monastery be built. But of course, the demons are metaphors for ourselves, aren't they? So in a way, he doesn't kill the demons; he tames them. So he brings them into ourselves. So I guess in a certain way, we've probably got these elements of ourselves that we don't like, or maybe even hate about ourselves. And yet the answer is to integrate them in, isn't it? To sort of love them in a way and to understand them, and So I wonder. I don't want to make it too explicit, but I wonder if there's something in that kind of myth of the kind of integration of the self. Like transformation is about, well, basically owning up to who we really are, isn't it? And making that part of ourselves. Not just saying I want to take the best bits and get rid of all the bad bits. But sort of harnessing it all up in service of the Dharma and transformation. Got anything more you'd like to add?
Happy Padmasambhava Day. I think it's really great that we're celebrating Padmasambhava. He's so unlike what most people think of as Buddhism. Anyway, maybe that's what your question points to as well, Alex, is like, if you ask the average man or woman in the street about Buddhism, they say, isn't that like vegetarianism, being nice to people, non-violence, right? Padmasambhava does not look like that.
No.
And I think that's great. I think that he brings the kind of edginess, the kind of, danger and challenge that actually is part of the Dharma life, is part of living for the truth. So I'm very glad that we're celebrating Padmasambhava Day.
Celebrating energy and transformation.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Well, very nice to have a discussion.
I've enjoyed this. Thanks for your questions.
Thanks for your questions. So we're going to break in a minute, but first of all, I want to ask you for money. I feel a bit nervous because I've got one of the Tree Ratner's leading fundraisers right next to me. So there's a little. I just get in touch with that feeling, anxiety, pressure. But anyway, no, I want to ask you for money. So you'll probably be very familiar that at Brixton we need to raise £2,000 a month to run our activities. And I want to say that is really what we need to raise. It's not just a figure that would be nice to get. That is actually what we need to raise every month. And so far this month we've raised £1,401. So we need to raise a further £599 to keep everything going. And I want to tell you exactly what that's for. I want to tell you what it takes to run these events, to run these activities, and run all the weekly classes that we run. I want to say how important they are as well. I think it's very interesting. I've been looking at the government regulations at the moment, and we're in Tier 2 at the moment in London, and we're probably going to be entering Tier 3 soon. Maybe at some point over the winter. And interestingly, the government has recognised places of worship as essential services, so we're allowed to stay open and run classes, in-person classes throughout. They're probably, I suspect that they've recognised the vital importance that has for people's mental health and well-being. So,
our MP has written to you to say just that.
That's right. Yeah, that's it. We had a letter from our local MP saying thank you for what Brixton Buddhist community is doing. So it's an essential service, and it's an essential service that doesn't get any government funding, doesn't get any money from elsewhere. It comes from you, the community. And that £2,000 goes towards paying for the venues that we run, It costs us £130 a night to run those venues. Of course, we don't get any money for them. The dana coming in is very little. So they make a loss. We're making £260 a loss every week. And it takes around 140 hours of time every month to just run these activities. You know, you employ me part-time to look after the vision and to bring the people together. You employ Lizzie part-time to queue up all the events, to get the website up and keep it going, to do all the publicity, and you employ Jack for about a day a week to do the editing on these videos and put them out. So that's what it takes, 140 hours of people's time, and those two classes, those two venues, plus whatever we're using today. So that's what the £2,000 goes towards. And actually it's very little, isn't it? It's really not very much in a way. So I just want to ask you for £600 right now. I want to ask you for £600. And we've probably got about 20 or 30 people watching. And maybe only a few of you will give to that. You know, maybe 10%, 20%, something like that.
Well, I guess some of you might be giving already.
Oh, many of you will be giving.
I'm sure some. Yes,
many of you will be giving. But for this particular appeal, I want to ask. I'm speaking to those 3 or 4 people that might want to give. So maybe you could think about giving £150. Maybe that seems like a lot, but if you've got maybe you've been saving some money. Maybe you're not going out to dinner and restaurants. Maybe you're not going on holiday. Maybe you can spare that. So if you can spare that for this month, I'd like to ask you to give that. And if 4 of you do that, then we can get our £600.
Yeah.
If of course that's too much, then you might want to think about half of that, £75, or giving whatever you can. But that would be really, really helpful, and just make sure we can carry on our activities. And you know, there is a real threat that if we don't raise enough money, we just have to do less.
Sure.
You know, we just have to do less. We have to let one of us go, or we have to stop running less classes. So anyway,
if we raise more, I guess we can do more.
If we raise more, we can do more. We can do more. So it's not an abstract number, and it does really matter.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll just ask you to do that. So Adam will put the link in the description. You can go to the website and do that. Anything I've forgotten?
Well, it'll appear on the dynamometer, won't it?
It will appear on the dynamometer.
Is that coming later?
It's come up now, I think.
Oh, is it on there? Oh, right. So we can't see that.
That's right.
There we go. You can make that dynamometer move.
Hit the £2,000 target, yes. And on Monday night there'll be a class where our totalizer, and you'll be able to see how we did.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Great. So I'll stop asking you now for money, but do that right now before you go and have a cup of tea later. And just to say that we're going to pack everything down now and head down to Effra Space to set up for the Mitra ceremonies. So do tune in. We'll be starting again from 7. We've got quite a lot to do, so if we're a little bit late, do bear with us. We are working as fast as we can. We need to eat a bit of food as well. Hamlet kindly cooked us some food so we can have something to eat before we go. So it's a bit like a military operation today. Do try to watch that live. So that Mitra ceremonies won't be up past next week, sorry. So we're going to be taking that down. So don't miss it. If you miss it tonight, do watch it in the next few days to make sure you can witness Ollie, Olivier, Nicholas and David all become Mitras, or become friends of the community, which we'll be talking about later on. So see you at 7. Catch you later.